Hey, what's up? It's Figure Hunter, and today we are finalizing the long-term review of training load, workout exertion tracking, and recovery time for the four major providers. That's Coros, Suunto, Polar, and Garmin. So obviously everything on the Fit Gear Hunter channel is dedicated to tracking and testing devices for CrossFit versus all the running, swimming, and biking videos that are out there. And if you like this, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing for more. There will be timestamps down below if you want to just jump to different sections. And there's a lot of reviews coming up. I'm reviewing the Gatorade Sweat Patch, the Suunto 9 Peak, which an awesome subscriber, Jason Davis, actually loaned me to test. The Fitbit Charge 5, the Whoop 4, the Vertix 2, all of those in the upcoming weeks. But what is training load, exertion tracking, workout analysis? So I have the Polar Vantage V2, the Coros Pace 2, the Suunto Barrow 9, and the Garmin Fenix 6, and doing all of this testing over a number of weeks. But what I'm specifically looking at is how their analytics evaluate each level of difficulty of the workout, the needed recovery time that it's recommending you take, and the overall training load and training impact on your body from the workout to one workout to the next and over a longer period of time. You look at so many watches that evaluate in very simple terms. They basically will tell you, here's your heart rate graph, or here's the time you spent in the aerobic or anaerobic zone. Here's the time you spent in different zones of your heart rate max rate. But what does that mean for our fitness development? What does that mean for the level of strain from this workout to this workout? What does that mean about how we're evolving over a period of weeks and evolving our fitness? And that's the premise and point of what you would want a device to help you with for CrossFit training or really any intense training regimen or program, is to help you to see how hard did you hit it now? How hard have you been hitting it on average? How hard can your body handle it being hit, and how much recovery time do you need between this difficult workout and the next difficult workout? But which of these device manufacturers provide this information in the most, what feels like the most worthwhile content, the most easy to understand metrics, and the most pertinent or felt accuracy with each of these providers? Coros, Polar, Suunto, and Garmin. So what we're going to do tonight is just do an in-depth analysis of each of their components. We're going to talk about the pros and the cons of each, and I'm going to tell you what I think about all of them in summary, and which I think provide the best of each different aspect, and then which I think is the best all around. So with no further ado, let's dive into the list. The first up is Coros, and before I show you the watch, and with each of these we're going to look at the watch, then we're going to look at the app, and then we're going to come back together and talk about sort of pros and cons of what my experience was before we come to a final summary. So with Coros, please stop and listen. You cannot get any training analysis, analytics, workout analysis, and real valuable content until you have run for 300 minutes. Today is September 18th, 2021, so if that changes after this, I don't know. But you have to run 300 minutes at an even minimum of 10 minutes of a run at a even grade, even pace. You can't be doing intervals. 30 sessions of that, 30 10-minute sessions. I almost wonder if you could figure out a way to drive around in your car just to burn it out, because I use none of the running stats, but I had to put in 300 minutes. And then all I do is CrossFit now. So now the CrossFit stuff, you'll see pertinent, reliable, actually useful information. They've done a great job evolving these different aspects. But again, you cannot activate any real training analytics. The watch will show empty fields until you've run 300 minutes to activate the Evo Lab. So with that, let's dive into the watch and the app. Okay, so let's look at the Coros. So the Coros watch, you unlock it. This is just the primary stats you'll see as far as training load goes. So the main thing is this is running performance, and you can get in there and see your race predictors, all of which is worthless to me, and most people do CrossFit. And look how good, I'm really a good runner. Fair. So then fatigue level. So this is actually really useful visually on the watch. The base fitness is also very useful. Load impact doesn't actually help me at all, but the base fitness, just get the light back on, the base fitness just evolving over time, and then fatigue levels high. I actually have done 3 days in a row of relatively hard workouts with longer Metcons, so that's really useful. Then you click in, you can see the visual display of the training load over time. This is your load. This is not like how much time you put in. This is how hard the workouts were. Really helpful. And then distribution, not really helpful. That's sort of worthless. But your load impact was high comparing to the base fitness. Be cautious. Really, really great. Thank you. I think that's useful. And then you go into recovery time. So this is where it has a problem. It thinks everything I do is anaerobic. And so it shows me as like 9% recovered. And then I love it when you click in, please rest 75 hours before training, and you really won't be recovered for 4 weeks. But that's just sort of ridiculous. And the Metcon today was 30 minutes. It was longer. Yesterday was 20 or whatever. And so there were hard Metcons that really did strip me, but not at all where I needed, 3 days or whatever, or 4 days till I'm fully recovered. So that's the overall training load specifics and what you see in that simple direction. But, you can see in the history, you can see what the workouts look like. So this was a difficult workout. So here's where you see it. Training load 154. That's actually pretty high. It says medium, but it's actually pretty high in the spectrum of things from what I've seen. Training, this is where it's, the workout today was a long, grueling workout, and it gave me a less aerobic training effect, more anaerobic. We're going to look at this and talk about this conceptually in a second, but just it always is seeing high anaerobic training effects. So it's got a good summary of information. I do like you can click through the wheel. Good overall calorie burns, but then there it is. 4 days. Every time I do a hard workout, it's 4 days recovery time. So that doesn't make sense. So let's look at the app, and then we'll come back together. Okay, so this is Coros. You have simple information. I don't really look at all these things, so we're just looking at training load and workout exertion evaluation. So you go into the workouts, this is the same workout at the top. This is what you get in the app. It's really a simple replication of information, but Coros does a great job laying it all out. It's all visually very pretty and easy to sort of absorb. You can hit this little, like in the middle where you see training load, you can hit the I, and it'll tell you more about what training load means. If it ever loads, I'm not going to wait for it. Then you get your workout. And so again, here's the training effect where it's giving an evaluation of aerobic training effect and anaerobic. So aerobic, I see more as building your fitness, your ability to absorb oxygen in your blood, and oxygen to supply you with fuel to continue your workout. Anaerobic, your muscles, glycogen continuing to fuel it. But this is what I see all the time. Every workout, oops. Did it again. So more training, anaerobic training effect. Okay, now we're back. So here's another workout. Again, you see like my heart rate was up for a long period of time. It was just a prolonged 5 rounds, and my training anaerobic higher. Not that one, because that was just a lifting session, not very useful. This one was wall balls and rowing. Just wall balls and rowing for 12 rounds, and it's all it was. Wall balls and rolling. So there was probably never a point, although my arms did get tired, but 3.8, it ranked it much higher in the anaerobic training effect than the aerobic training effect. So that's something that I really wanted to point out, so I apologize for taking a little extra time. So here's the basic summary from the Evo lab. And you can see in the top that the top bars are only relevant to runners. The second bar behind it is useful. So your fatigue level's high, and that's true. I've come off 3 days of harder workouts, and the base fitness and load impact, we'll see in a second how that relates to the real world. And then the 7-day load, again, I've come off a 3-day period of a lot of workouts, and you can see the 7-day load, but the bar graph itself is over the range. It's got my recommended range of 386 to 680, and my 7-day load 722, and I'm taking a day off. So when you click any of these bars, and we're going to go first to that fatigue, base fitness, load impact, it brings you to a sideways chart, which I don't love that you're forced into this, but either way, it actually is somewhat useful for this information. So one thing I like to do is turn off fatigue and load impact and see my base fitness evolving. So this is over a long period of time, and it's weird I didn't have any base fitness, because after I ran 300 minutes of running, it started me at like a base fitness of 0 or like minimal. So you can see your base fitness, and this I just like to see. Oh, look at that. Sorry, I didn't realize it did that. That's actually pretty cool. You can see your base fitness growing over time, and I really like this. So like I'm at the peak fitness. I don't think I've hit 69, because no, the variable changes. And you can layer in your fatigue as your fatigue builds. For whatever reason, obviously in the beginning, my fatigue level is high, and then your load impact. You can see your load over the last 3 days is really, increasing my fatigue over the last 3 days. And then the other thing you can do is drop down into a breakout chart for this. And this shows you your 7-day load relative to the ranges. And you can see your ranges at any point in time, so you don't have to guesstimate what that sort of shaded area is. So they've done a really great job at breaking down, I think, important elements. So the fatigue, I think that's an important element. I'm taking a rest day or going on some light run tomorrow. Base fitness is evolving. I think it's great to see your base fitness growing. And the overall training load is showing me a range, and it's accurate. This is things that Coros never did well, was training load tracking, and I feel like they're actually doing it excellently. The only caveat is that they're getting, in my opinion, they're getting very wrong the anaerobic versus aerobic, and so these information is very right. So what do I like about Coros? There's a lot of really positive things. Outside of that one caveat, you have to run 300 minutes. So think about that. 30 sessions of 10-minute runs, 10 sessions of 30-minute runs. Whatever you got to do it in 42 days. So the specifics I find to be really worthwhile and somewhat spot on the training load. So the training load tracking over time, I really have found that I do like the graphs. I used to not like that they forced you into this horizontal, have to move your phone, but I feel like it's useful information. I feel like it's accurate in how it's tracking my training load, and then I really like that base fitness number is developing. I think the base fitness actually is a very useful number when you can track your training load and you can see the bands. So I feel like if the base fitness developing, the bands are going up in how much load you need to carry. So I feel like the summary of information, in the workouts is great. I feel like the summary of information on the watch is great. It's almost like you're going back to an old Garmin 245, which would just give you, bam, here's your training load. Bam, here's what you need. Here, you're in the green, you're in the red, you're like overtraining, undertraining, maintaining, whatever it is. It's just simple information with simple aspects. So I feel like those things are great. And one thing that is a major pro of Coros is that this is the cheapest watch Coros offers. So it's $199. You just have to put in the running time and you can get all the training analytics. Now, you will not get the sleep analytics. I'm not doing a study on that, but with this, Coros offers this Evo Lab on their full suite of watches that I am aware of, but at least on their cheapest watch. And if you are a runner, you get a lot of good running statistics. So some of the other lines, you have to pay for like a minimum $350, minimum $250, minimum watch to be able to get the training load specifics and the stats, but Coros is not that way. Now, what is the negative? You have to run 300 minutes. That is a major negative. The second negative is the fatigue bar just seems kind of off. And the two major negatives, which I think are the primary major negatives, is the workout analytics is always overrating CrossFit workouts, and I did a review on anaerobic versus aerobic workouts. It's in the summary below, and I might touch on it again because I really did an in-depth analysis, in my opinion, I'm not expert, of what does CrossFit correlate to, aerobic or anaerobic or a blend of both, and my finding was that it was a blend of both, with the primary base, most amount going to aerobic with some amount going to anaerobic. And so I feel like when Coros evaluates it, they go, oh, you're in the 80-90 heart rate zone for a period of time. This is a mostly anaerobic workout and a minorly aerobic workout, and I think that is not accurate. So I feel like their training effect analysis on the workout analysis is off. And secondly, the recovery time is way off. I've worked out with this. So first I did 300 minutes of running, and now I've done 6 weeks of workouts. And every time I do a CrossFit workout that has any level of strain that puts me in that training load, 150, 125, it says I need 4 days of recovery because it thinks that I did, 40 minutes of anaerobic, strip your muscles to their bare bones. And it's not accurate. So I don't need 4 days, so the recovery time's way off, so hopefully they'll adjust that down. I don't know how they're developing the science, but because it's overrating the anaerobic on the training effect for the workout, it's also overrating in a significant way the recovery time. So with that, let's take a look at Suunto coming up next. Okay, so this is Suunto. So Suunto, you just get some basic stats. So first we're just gonna look at the logbook. So you can see what the stats are from the workout itself. So 1 hour and 10 minutes. You can see how it shows you the information. So it gives you clear information. This looks a lot like Coros. I just feel like it's a little more laid out. Recovery time is way too low and the calories too high, in my opinion. But I do think that the training effect for this particular workout was probably a 4. Garmin was saying it was a 4. It felt like a 4 as far as the intensity and the way it exhausted me. The epoch seems a little bit low, so that's like a ranking for how much exertion you actually put out in the workout. So let's just get out of the logbook and see if we can go all the way back to start. And so then we're going to see the training effect aspects. So we're doing a little opposite from what we did from Coros. So this is just a heart rate graph, and this is just your heart rate over time. Not really useful. And then your overall recovery time, I forget where it is, resources, so that's not really training load related. And then you got this, and you can see your calories, and that's not really training. So this is the amount of time you've trained, and this is the recovery time. Now I switched over to the Suunto 9 Peak, so I'm just going to show you this because this is actually, it's interesting because the Suunto 9 Peak is like the exact same watch, just on a little baby watch. It's like all the same stats. You can get everything on for the gargantuan. Oh, it's 0 recovery time because it probably thinks I really didn't need to recover from the rigorous training that I did today, which actually was sort of soul crushing. So what do we see in both of these? So recovery time, not that. We can see a lot of information. It's all really generic. So you can see recovery time in the watch, but we know it's too low. And then other than that, you just see your workout times. You don't see any real training load tracking in the watch, and that's a big bummer. So you don't get any real statistics for your training load over time other than recovery time in the watch, and other than the couple of stats you can see in the workout logbook. You can see what you would get after workout, which is just Suunto's calculations for training effect and for epoch and recovery time, but you don't see any of the training peak stuff. It doesn't flow back to the watch, which is the bigger bummer, but for now we're just going to take it because all the Suunto watches give it. And here's the Suunto app. I mean, I don't know, it's stupid. I've always loved that they have a picture of a stupid CrossFit gym on the CrossFit workout, and it's got representation. So when you go into a look at a workout, they have all these stats. I don't love that it's actually like boiled all together in one big like list of numbers. And if you had more than these numbers, if you go on a run or a bike ride, there's like rows where you're like scrolling across these numbers just sort of all in one area, all in the same font size, all in the same box size. It just not super helpful. So you have your primary information there and then your heart rate graph. Now, this was interesting. This is a side note. It's a sneak peek on the Suunto 9 Peak review that I'm starting. This was without a chest strap, and it was terrible. It was not good. If you can see this is a workout where my heart rate stayed high for 30 minutes straight at the end. So basically starting like 15 minutes in, I was just max heart rate. So this is what you see though, if you look at in the middle boxes here, recovery, your training stress score, that's like an overall score, and your PTE. Even if you go to like a harder workout where I did have a chest strap, you can see a higher TSS, which is training stress score. You can see the workout. This is connected to a chest strap. Always connect yourself to a chest strap. But you can see the PTE is 4, and that's 4 out of 5. So that's a high percentage training effect impact on the body. The epoch at 96 is high, but the recovery time is 14 hours. Super low recovery time. You go to any of these where here's a 4.6. That is like near the peak. You should be dead. 126 is a high epoch, at least in the variation of what Suunto was evaluating. Recovery time 17 hours. That is false information. The TSS score of 61 is actually one of the highest I've had as well, but PTE of 4.6. But then the recovery time. Here, that was just a lifting session. But here was another one which was really hard. This was, oh my gosh, 4.8. This was the wall balls and rowing. Epoch of 136 and the recovery time is 16 hours. That is too short of recovery time. So anyway, that's the workout analytics. I'm getting out of the specifics, but here is the overall breakdown of the training load. So the training load tracking. So again, if you click into any of these pieces, you can get information for what these mean, because I cannot stand how they have it the terms, because the terms don't help. Now, fatigue we can understand. Fatigue is high for me right now at 43, so that's great. It's true. My fitness level, you can see the fitness evolving. You can get all these numbers in a bar graph. And then the form, if you look at the specific form and the 3 ways down, from training stress balance, about workload. It compares your workload long-term and short-term training load, and it shows you how adapted you are. Now, why is it negative? Now, my short-term workload is higher than my longer-term workload on every other calculation metric, but it uses it as a negative. So what they are saying, and this is important to realize, is that the shaded area is actually your range of where you should be, and the form area is actually a positive score. So like I'm in my shaded area. So it's correct. And then it's giving you specifics. I do like that it's productive training. You can see you're keeping fit, so you're maintaining, you're losing fitness or going too hard. So I do like that they tell you your phases in very simple format, but I don't like how they laid out the form factor. So the form is actually my training load, and it's showing that I'm right there in the range. Everything's great there, but it's in a negative capacity, which it shouldn't be. And then the top, but I feel like the information is so accurate. In the top, my fitness over time, my fatigue, all good stuff, but just the way they laid it out and the verbiage they're using helps me not quite understand as much for that. Now, what do I think of Suunto? I think, man, they've got some great stats with this new Training Peaks. I just want to stop and help evaluate, clarify the benefits of having an outside, highly analytical party provide you with statistical analysis for workout evaluation. Garmin's been doing it for a long time with First Speed Analytics, and I honestly have always felt like they are the most accurate. But with Training Peaks now coming into the Suunto platform, and Suunto is using it, if you own a Suunto watch, you're going to get Training Peaks Analytics, which is just crazy big. And then you couple that, and I'm going to give some asterisks here, but you also still have all of Suunto's training evaluation itself. You still have EPOC, which is the evaluation for the level of overall intensity of that workout, how much oxygen your body has to take in just to recover. You have training effect, which they call PTE, but it's still the same 0 to 5, just the overall impact on your aerobic capacity from that. And they have recovery time. That those are their stats, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the level of detail that the Training Peaks platform is providing is super high quality. I really think the information is super valuable. So their evaluation for fatigue, their evaluation for fitness development. I love a watch that tells you can see sort of numerically how your fitness is growing over time. That is a primarily important aspect, and not everybody does it. The biggest one doesn't do it. So you can see your fitness developing, and it's not VO2 max, it's your overall fitness from the level of training that you've been hitting. So think about that, and I hope you watch the whole video so you can get this part. It's not VO2 max. VO2 max is a calculation of how much you can run and how your heart handles the run and the pace and the different grades. This is an evaluation of your fitness as it evolves over time. So the Training Peaks gives you the fatigue, the fitness level, your load over time. So it's really helpful, really good information. So what are the negatives with Suunto? And this is where it becomes a real block. The Suunto information, to me, I don't just sort of glean in. I've been doing it for 6 weeks now, looking at these stats, and I still feel like they could make it more visually understandable. Number one, they use all these words that don't relate to anything in the real world. It's like they put industry jargon technology or terminology on all these things. Your form factor, which has to do with your impact on your body. I mean, it's like I had to read, and I still think these terms are not useful for the everyday person. So you have to look at the graphs, you have to look at the numbers, you have to feel like you're good about those things, but I feel like they could functionally make it much more able to absorb. So that's Suunto, and that's the only negative I can say about the Training Peaks specific. So it's the visual display, the clarity on what the information means. So the other thing, and the one minor thing about the Training Peaks is they don't tell you what a good range. So if you're doing like a certain level, I mean, there is a range on the form factor, which is your overall level of impact or how much your body's sort of worn down by workouts, I think is my understanding of it. But they don't give you as much of a range on some of the other components. Like the fatigue level, it doesn't tell you like this fatigue level is too high for you. Again, so look at the graphs again if you have to backtrack in the video. this fatigue level is not too high, or this, it's not quite giving you the information in a way that you can digest it in a way that's useful. But the last thing is that they do give you this training effect, this PTE score, and they give you a recovery time. And my recovery time is always significantly less, and the numbers don't relate. So they give you an epoch, which it seems really spot on. It's somewhat close to the Coros numbers for how much intensity and how much time it's going to take to recover from the workout. So that's a useful number, but by itself, it doesn't tell you anything but just a little interesting bit of information about the intensity of the workout. And the PTE, which is the training effect, the overall training effect on your body of that workout, it'll be like 4.3 out of 5. So that's like near the top. And then my recovery time will be 17 hours. That's typically what it is. It'll be like 3.2 out of 5. So that's over 50% towards the, improving overall cardiovascular fitness. And my recovery time will be 10 hours. And I definitely don't feel like 17 hours relates, 10 hours relates, and any of the information on the recovery time relates. So something in the Suunto calculations, I do believe that they took over, and this is just a guess, it's not a factual piece of information. I think they took over the analytics from First Beat, and I think they're doing the numbers themselves, and they're not quite tying together. So if they could take the beauty of the training effect, the training peaks, and the overall fitness evaluation over time, and they could couple it with the training effect and an accurate recovery time, it would have all the factors. But for right now, unfortunately, the training effect is sort of a useless piece of information. The recovery time is sort of a useless piece of information. I actually think the epoch and the training effect is somewhat accurate. So maybe what you do if you own a Suunto watch is you enjoy all the beauty of the training peaks, you take as much as you can from them, and then you take the training effect, the epoch, and you take the workout recovery time, and I would say probably double it. And that's going to be about right. So with that, let's dive into the Polar ecosystem. And now Polar. So Polar, you have this one main screen. This is available. This screen's available on the Polar M, M2, Vantage V, Vantage V2, Grit X, not on the Ignite, and none of this. No training load tracking is available on the Unite. So the Ignite, Ignite 2, has these stats built into the app, but doesn't have it built into the watch. So you click into it and it just gives you a simple summary. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing your strain and your tolerance, which is just your average of your workout over the last 7 days versus the tolerance. Like your body can handle an average of 62 because the last 28 days you kept an ongoing strain score of 62 or an overall epoch or a training load on your body of 62, and recently in the last 7 days you've been putting on 80. So you take strain divided by tolerance and gives you a positive number or above 1, and it puts you in this category where it's productive. So I'm like near the red because these do get close, and 1.3 is on the brink of overtraining because I put in 3 hard days because I knew I was coming into the end of this sort of study. And it gives you verbiage. I do like that Polar actually gives you verbiage. None of the others really do that, at least not that I've really clearly come across. So that's step one, and then you can obviously see what the training sessions look like on the watch. They don't, it's not like a ton of information, a ton of value, so we'll just click through it. So the heart rate zones, energy used. Yeah, a lot of watches don't actually give you the energy used, like what you got to replace from that that workout. And oh man, because I didn't record it on this, I recorded it on, it's just not coming through. So let's see if we can get the training load to actually show on one of these workouts, because this, I was doing everything with the chest strap so I didn't have to have yet another watch. It looks like it's not going to come through. But just so that if you have a watch, and I'm not going to get into the nuance to try to forcibly show it, there would be a training load score. So what you only get on the Polar system, because it's a little bit simple, heart rate zones, heart rate, how much you burned in cardio, carbs, fats, and proteins or whatever, but you'll get a training load score. So you just get one workout evaluation or metric. So what do we see with Polar? Polar, this is, so you have the main landing page, which gives you a summary of the activity goal and the workout for the day and where you stand in your cardio load status. So we're just going to look at a specific, and they changed their overall layout. So if you're looking for your logbook, you actually have to go to the 3 dotted lines on the bottom right, and then you can see your calendar. That's where you actually have your summary of workouts that you've done, and it also combines it with the training load tracking, which is the cardio load is what they call it. But if we just look at the most recent workout, this is how a workout looks when it comes in summary. So you have all the information summarized in the main page, all the red. You have your training load pro. So that TREMP is just an evaluation of the exertion level. That's your main stat under the training load pro heading. You obviously have your own perceived load, but it'll tell you that number and it calculates it in high, medium, low. And then because I'm using a chest strap connected to polar beat instead of trying to connect it to a watch, it doesn't give the heart rate zones. But if you use a watch and you connect to a chest strap and you keep your watch on, you'll get the heart rate zones built into it. But the main stat from all of this, besides these generic stats like heart rate average and heart rate max, that sort of thing, is the training load pro stat, the cardio load for that particular workout. So it is a little bit simple, and I don't like how they have all the fields in red and the information is not like completely visually laid out in the way that you might want it to be. But the training load pro calculation for cardio load is where you get the information. So you can jump into your training load directly from here, as well as you could jump from the main page into this bottom cardio load status. So we'll just go from there. Here is where it calculates it. And the way it calculates it is the purple line is the average of your load over the last 7 days. The blue line is your average of your load over the last 28 days. So if you're pushing in the last 7 days higher and harder than the last average 28 days, then you're improving your fitness. And I think it's the most simple and well laid out, and we'll look at it in a second for how well it's laid out in full form. But I do like the red lines. The red line is the intensity or the load for that particular workout for the day, and then on the bottom it gives you a summary in recommendation. So it's like you're being productive because your last 7 days was more intense on average than the last 28 days. And you can hold your finger there and it'll show you the heavy duty, like the amount of load you put on your body that day versus the strain, which is the 7-day average, and the tolerance, which is the 28-day average for how much load per day. So really helpful that it puts the workouts themselves each day alongside your strain score, and your overall fitness development is that tolerance score, how much your body can handle. But then you hit this little, in the top right, this little arrows all facing out, and it turns it into a really awesome graph. And you can hold your finger on any one of these days and you can see how much work you put in. So there was like a super high cardio load day, put a lot of strain in. But the blue line is like your fitness development, like where your fitness stands, how you've evolved it over time. And I obviously didn't wear the Polar for all periods of time because I'm testing different watches, but you can see all your history just beautifully laid out. And the blue line is again your fitness level, which is really just your 28-day average, but it's your fitness level over time, so you can see it sort of graphically laid out in a really, really nice visual. And then the bottom, he shows you by week, whether you're in the green, whether in different sections of over training or under training. So obviously the gray is the under training, and the yellow is the overtraining. So the green is productive. So you can see it just really, really clearly laid out. And that's the summary for the Polar overview for cardio load as well as the workout stats for each. Okay, so let's look at what we think of a Polar. So with Polar, I absolutely love their visual display of your training coupled with your workouts across time. So your training load coupled with your workouts across time. I feel like it's the most simple, the most visually helpful version. I love that they have a little red line so you can see, oh man, I killed it that day. But you can see like where you pulled up your averages. I love that their training load calculation is really straightforward and simple. The intensity on average of what I believe is called their training load score, but it's like their EPOC, the intensity evaluation. So their EPOC number for the last 7 days versus the last 28 days. So like, 28 days, you've been averaging, 100, and then you've been averaging 90 this week. You better get after it. Or you've been averaging 110. So you're pushing your intensity based on the overall intensity of your workout, based on the oxygen needed to recover from your workout or that specific metric. So I think that and you can see your base fitness, which your base fitness is relatively this 28-day training load, this 28-day average of how much fitness you're packing in or how much exertion you're packing out. So, and they also have, recommendations. So if you're maintaining, if you're growing, you're underproductive, it'll give you recommendations. You get verbiage on a lot of their specifics. I love the way they overall give you simple information on the workouts, in the simple summary form. But what are the negatives? The negatives go right along with that, unfortunately, and it's tragic, but I feel like their system is overly simplistic. And then the other major negative is that there's no recovery time. So there used to be recovery time, and it was actually worthwhile. And then it used to be that you could wear a chest strap, link it to polar beat, and when it flowed over to polar flow, which is where the workout training load analysis lives, it would actually give you the recovery time, even if you didn't use a watch, even if you use a chest strap, whatever you used. But now you don't get the recovery time no matter what you do, and I just think this makes no sense. They had a metric for it, even if you feel like it's not as good as it could be. Just at least give us a starting baseline, but no recovery time. But anyway, back to the simplicity. I feel like they're too simple. So number one, when you get the workout breakdown, they put all of the information in one big red block. So it's not visually helpful to break down sections of information, overall information. You just sort of have blob of information with the heart rate graph and the training load number for that. And then secondly, they don't give you any specifics for aerobic focus, anaerobic focus. It doesn't help you know any details to your training. It's just like intensity level evaluation. And don't get me wrong, a lot of watches give you heart rate graphs, which is no evaluation for fitness, and it's no evaluation for fitness evolution, how you're growing in your fitness. But all Polar gives you is workout exertion number, and then they take the workout exertion number and they calculate the training load over time based on 7 days and 28 days. But overall, I feel like it's just a little too simple, but I love it. You can look at that big graph and you can go back for years. You can see your fitness. Oh, I was really fit then, and I really dropped off there. Now, for me, it's just because I switched to a different watch. But either way, you can see it all on Polar System, but they're overly simple and there's no recovery time, which just makes it hard to compete. So with that, let's talk about the granddaddy of them all, Garmin. Let's dive in. Okay, now we have Garmin. And Garmin, this is the Phoenix 6X Titanium Solar, because I got this specifically to review it against the verdicts. So a few main things. We're just going to go quickly to the training status. So I have run, yes, 5 minutes in a GPS activity once a week. So I have my training status, and this would be blank if you didn't do the 5-minute run, but you still have all the stats I'm going to show you next. But now that I did do the 5-minute run, I show productive. So that's good. My VO2 max, which isn't really helpful, but here's your load over time. So it doesn't give you this range in the app, and we'll see that in a second, but it does show my range, and you can see that I have increased my intensity, and we'll look at the graph as well as how I've done it, but it's a simple summary of how much work you put in this week. Is showing balanced. I mean, I swear to you, it's weird that I'm doing this video of a 6-week long-term study, and this is the first time in my history of owning a Garmin for, I don't know, however long, that I've ever had balanced. Anaerobic, highly aerobic, and lowly aerobic are all within these dotted lines. It's crazy because I think something is changing with how they're calculating it, because it was just arbitrarily saying like everything's highly aerobic, and that wasn't necessarily true because I was burning anaerobic energy or glycogen from muscles. You'll see in the video down in the description. So recovery time, recovery expected. You can click this, and sometimes it'll actually have a little verbiage. So recovery time. So that's what we get when we go into the watch, and then we go into the last workout. If you want to see the last activity, here's a simple summary. You would get better summary after your workout on the watch, but you can obviously click into it and you can see like all the stats, which is just a bunch of information of the load score. You can see your training effect, and it gives you the baseline information, and then you can see your heart rate graph. So all these things are built into it. The most important thing is the training effect. I like this because it gives you the aerobic, the anaerobic, one simple screen, and your load score. This is your epoch, which is the another evaluation for intensity right down in the bottom. So with that is the Garmin. And now for Garmin, the best in class in my opinion. So we have a number of different things we can look at. The first is just an overall summary of a workout, so you can see the workout analytics and how they lay out the information. For whatever reason, they don't put it all in the main tab. This is a summary tab, and you go over all the way to the right for the analytics tab. And you can see all of the information. Now this is a Phoenix 6, so it's giving you temperature, elevation, respiration rate, so a little more information. And a lot of watches do give respiration rate these days, but you can see the heart rate graph. If you touch any of these bars, it'll turn it to the horizontal and it'll show you your graph over time. And you can see, where your heart rate was at any period of time. But this is the training effect. So this was a workout that included a lot of thrusters and pull-ups and bike erg. And so the training effect, highly aerobic with some anaerobic. So it was true that there was some anaerobic impact that was fairly healthy, but mostly highly aerobic, and that really helps. So it's actually been recently giving me really very good information when it comes to the workout overview. So again, 3.4 with an anaerobic of 1.1. And one of the things you can do if you want to know how to find your activities is you go into the training status. Now this training status is on this front page because I did a 5-minute run with the GPS activity. It's a primary requirement. You have to do initially two 5-minute runs using the run profile with GPS, and then you got to do one a week. And if you don't do it, this training status will not appear. But everybody look with me on the very bottom. You got my day, you got performance, you got health, you got activities. If you ever can't see the training status on the front page, you could hit the performance tab, and there's your training status at the top, and it will take you to all the same load details as you would get on the front page if you do the 5-minute run. So we're going to go in there. So this is just, it breaks it up. This is a negative, and I just realized now because I'm shooting this after I did the summary for Garmin, but one of the negatives is you don't see long-term trends when you change a device, which is really problematic because I change devices all the time, but you can see it by device. But either way, you got your load tracking. I'm going to start with the end. This is your summary of your load over time, and you can see when I was doing so it gives you this bar graph, and you can hold your finger on it, and you can see what the number is. But for whatever reason, it doesn't give you the range. You actually have to see the watch to see the range, and it's the range for only the current day, not the range for the past, where you can see how far in the green you were and where you stood on the range itself. But let's take a look at a couple of the other categories. So if you see, this is the rightmost tab heading for the load tab. So again, we come into training status. This is the base entry point, and you can see, and then you click in this middle button for the load, and then we went all the way to the right for the major load chart, the 7-day average versus your projected range. But there's two other categories, and I have found this is the easiest place to see workout history. You got all your workouts there, and if you touch one of these, it'll take you straight to the actual workout versus looking in the activity tab. But this is where it shows you also what kind of workout you put in: anaerobic, highly aerobic, and lowly aerobic. This is where I'm seeing new colors and new accuracy start to appear, and it's really amazing to me to see it. And then you have the load focus. Here's where, for the first time in my life, I'm balanced. I'm actually in all those dotted little areas. It's crazy because I've never really tried, but I have been doing more lowly aerobic activities, so okay. We can jump into anything. I like this workout a lot, so we're going to jump into it. This was the rowing and the wall balls, and you can see how we saw it on other systems, like the Suunto gave it a 4.8, a training effect, PTE is what they call it. So this is a 3.8 on the Garmin system. That's probably fairly accurate with some anaerobic of 2.1. So I was using a lot of glycogen in the muscles, but I was primarily and absolutely living off oxygen to breathe my way through that workout. But this is the strain over. This is where you see the summary of how they tell you information in the workout itself. So that now with Garmin, this has actually been a really useful study because I've really looked at and thought about each of these platforms as they compare to each other, and what I really do like, what I do feel like provides useful information, and what I feel like maybe they're providing a stat, but I don't really feel like it's an accurate stat. So in looking at Garmin, which I have always held out to, because they do all of the content, they do all the things you, in my opinion, all the things you could want for a full spectrum of CrossFit training. They do it. They provide you every stat. They provide you all of it, and it makes sense and is visually well laid out. So I've really thought about what is the gap, what are the fallouts, and so a few of the major things, and then I've actually learned some things in this process of really analyzing and looking at Garmin alongside some of these others. The first thing, the positives is that all of their information seems relevant and useful, and they are continually evolving their information to actually carry some higher level of accuracy. So take something like recovery time. So recovery time is just at you know, like how your fitness is right now, how hard that workout was, how much time you need to recover. But now they've evolved it to include your sleep quality as well as your body battery, which is overall heart rate variability and your stress over time. And so they're helping you to take into account multiple factors from one hard workout to the next. And on top of it, I feel like their number is always the most accurate, the recovery time number from the workout. Take the workout analysis, the workout analytics, and the training load. I did that study, as I have mentioned before, the conversation of the debate over aerobic or anaerobic effect of a CrossFit workout, both the lifting and the Metcon. Is it aerobic or anaerobic? And again, down in the description below is a link to my full analysis and my overall review of aerobic versus anaerobic and how I think CrossFit fits into a spectrum of actually building your base aerobic level and then adding to it anaerobic output. So you're both evolving both over time, with the primary impact being aerobic impact. I feel like Garmin has the absolute most accurate training effect. I feel like the training effect on the aerobic impact and the anaerobic impact is on point. I feel like it is spot on for what it should be, and I feel like having done that study, it's even more on point. And then last, one thing I have started to realize, I used to dislike the training load types. As we saw in the video, whether it's aerobic or anaerobic, highly aerobic or lowly aerobic, that's what it was. So the type of load for that particular workout, not just the training effect of it, but the overall way it just in general affected your body more. And then the ranges of time where your fitness should fall into these ranges of, amassing anaerobic effect, highly aerobic, and lowly aerobic. One thing that's interesting is they've gotten this information better. It's actually better now. It's like if I go on like a light run every day, or on once on the weekend, I add these things into it. Now my ranges, it's so bizarre, but like my anaerobic range is falling into highly aerobic and lowly aerobic. Now, if I am falling into range or not, I don't necessarily know, because there's a lot of science behind how you would evaluate that. But I think it's actually useful. Those first two tabs are useful. And then their training effect tab is always accurate. I really like the training status. And again, one caveat, and this is sort of touching on the negatives, is with Garmin, you have to run for 5 minutes 2 times. And you do once a week after that. So it's not onerous. It is not overwhelming. It's not asking a lot of you. You should do a 5-minute warm-up. You run with the running profile, GPS on. You run 5 minutes. However far you go, it doesn't matter. It's going to get a VO2 max score, and that it gives them an evaluation for the training status. And the status is the most important, the actual where you're at in the training paradigm. So we can look at that training load with the green bars, and then the overall where you're at and how much exertion you're putting in that week versus past weeks, and where you are in the range. But the most important is the training status, for whether you're peaking, whether you're underperforming or just maintaining, or you're really performing and increasing your fitness, or you're overdoing it. That's the most important part. And so all these things are useful. So what are the negatives with Garmin? As I've really tried to look at all of these things, one major negative, as I've seen compared to some of these other providers, is just the visual display of the primary training load. So the primary training load, I feel like, is not it's not super clear and useful visually like it needs to be, in my opinion. Secondly, you can't tap in, you can't spread out the graph, you can't turn it sideways, and you can't see the range. You don't know what the range is necessarily unless you look on the watch. So the watch contains the range, so you're not missing it altogether, but you don't see it simply on the green graph, which is the bar graph for what I think is the most important aspect of the fitness, because it flows into training status. So that's a negative. The second negative is you do have to run at least once a week, 5 minutes GPS, until you can see the results. So, and what we're going to do is look at this summary in 2 primary aspects. So there's the workout summary, the evaluation of the workout, and then there's training load tracking over time. So workout summary, best workout summary providers, hands down, Garmin and Coros. So they both provide anaerobic and aerobic impact. They both give you a simple, easy to read set of information. They both give you a clear, like a visual display of the training load that makes sense, and it does flow into the training load in a way that makes sense. But Garmin is just hands down better, and I really need to give an asterisk. Besides just the 300 minutes you have to run in order to get any of these stats on Coros. So again, you have to run 300 minutes to get any stats, any. But the bigger thing is it's just always going highly anaerobic. It's always just saying like everything's anaerobic. So in looking at a CrossFit workout, the information is nice, but Coros, I really feel, outside of the training load and the base fitness development, because those are accurate, the workout analytics, not accurate, and the recovery time, not accurate. Overweighting the anaerobic, and therefore overweighting the recovery time. So Garmin does all these things really well. It's very visually well laid out. It's very clear on the watch. I feel like the information is very useful how you see it. Now, all the watches I think provide useful information. I think Coros was probably the least useful in seeing the workout evaluation on the watch after the workout. Polar was the least useful, the least, and then Suunto, I would say, is a little bit behind Coros, but so it would go Polar at the worst. Then it would go Suunto. Suunto has really good information, but they didn't actually show you the training stress score, the actual load for that workout in the workout on the watch. It only comes through the calculation on the app. And then Coros. Coros gives you all the information, pretty well laid out. I mean, it's well done. It's just the information I don't think is totally accurate. And then the best being Garmin, and I think all the information is accurate and it's well laid out. You get a simple summary on the watch. You can dive into deeper details and you get into the app and see the well laid out. So what about training load? What about the actual training load that's useful for information and best visually displayed? I'm just going to break down each of these in their categories and based on the simplicity. So Coros I would put last because you have to run so much. It's not really last in my book for what the value is, but you have to run 300 minutes. And so that puts it sort of, it's like, it's not really available. Their stats are great, but they're not really available because you have to run so much. But I feel like good looking all around, very useful based fitness development, very useful 7-day training load, very useful information, and I'd say relatively pertinent fatigue evaluation as well. The negatives are the recovery time's way off in the anaerobic. Polar's next, and I feel like Polar and Suunto in some ways are tied. Polar is fantastic in their visual display. You can see your fitness develop over time. You can see this week's intensity versus the last 28 days average intensity. You can see, I love they put the workouts on the same page as the training load. You can see, oh man, I killed it right here and I boosted my averages. You can just sort of see that, and you can see it across time very easily. Their negatives are they're too simple. They only provide one score for the intensity level of that workout, and they provide no recovery time. Next would be Suunto, because Suunto does a full suite. Now, I would say you have to kick out the recovery time Suunto is providing, although I do feel like it's at least there, but I do feel like they have training effect, they have epoch, which are numbers that don't flow to anything, but they're at least numbers you can evaluate your workout intensity. So a 0 to 5 on the training effect, you can sort of see your gauge, where you're rated. And then their training load tracking, I feel like is terrible in how they explain it. But if I look at just the quality of it, I feel like it's super accurate. Whatever Training Peaks is doing, I feel like they're doing a good job at it. They're giving you good information, and you can see your base fitness grow. You can see your fatigue level. You can see when you're overdoing it in a week. And you can see a simple summary of the recommendation, like you're doing great, you're improving your fitness. I haven't ever hit overdoing it, underdoing it. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. But either way, I feel like they're doing a great job, and they're in second place. And then the first place and the overall winners for sure, Garmin. I feel like all their content, their quality, like their accuracy is getting more and more fine-tuned. The fact that they're doing recovery time based on the intensity of the workout, your overall fitness level, your sleep, and your stress level throughout the day is crazy, because it's what you would dream of. And couple that with the fact that I feel like their anaerobic versus aerobic evaluation of the workout is right. I feel like their recovery time, like I said, is right. And I feel like their load tracking is right. And they're even tweaking, or something's happening where they're hitting the right ranges for the load specifics. The only thing is just sort of a visual thing on the training load main page, and looking at the chart, that it's not as useful to dive into. So with that is the full in-depth analysis of workout exertion tracking, workout analytics, training, recovery time, and training load from all the 4 major primary contenders. I'm going to do some actual work on an Apple Watch that's running a workout app that now provides more content than we've seen in the past with any of them. So stay tuned for that on top of everything I mentioned earlier. So that's the major intensive long-term training load review from the Fit Gear Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.